Archangel Michael says, open this now. Do not close it. Someone in heaven is watching you at this exact moment, and what you do in the next few minutes matters more than you realize. Stop scrolling. Sit still for a second. Something in you already knows why this reached you today. There is a person who loved you, who watched over you while they were here, and who has not stopped watching now that they're gone. You have felt it before, haven't you? A presence you couldn't explain. A feeling that someone was near you during a moment you desperately needed comfort. That was not your imagination. That was real. Archangel Michael says, the person you are thinking of right now, the one who came to mind the moment you read the word heaven, wants you to know something today. Not something frightening. Something that has been waiting to reach you for longer than you realize. They are proud of you. Read that again. Let it land, even if part of you resists believing it right now. You have carried guilt since they left. Guilt over things left unsaid. Guilt over the last conversation that wasn't as warm as you wished it had been. Guilt over moments you were too busy, too distracted, too caught up in your own life to give them the attention you now wish you had given more freely. Archangel Michael says, release that guilt today. It was never meant to be carried this long. The love between you and this person was never measured by your last conversation, or your busiest week, or the ordinary imperfections that exist in every relationship, even the closest ones. It was measured by everything, the whole relationship, every year, every quiet moment of care that never made it into words. They know you loved them. They knew it then. They know it now. Think about the specific moment their absence hits you hardest. Maybe it's a particular time of day. Maybe it's a holiday that used to feel different when they were here. Maybe it's simply an ordinary Tuesday, when grief arrives uninvited, without warning, the way it often does long after everyone else assumes you should be finished grieving. You are not finished grieving, and that is allowed. Grief does not run on anyone else's timeline, no matter how much time has passed since they left. Archangel Michael says, they see you in those moments. Not as a source of sadness for them, but as evidence of how deeply you loved them, and how deeply that love continues even now. Grief this real does not exist without love this real underneath it. There is a message they want you to have today, and it is simple. Keep living. Not in spite of missing them, but because they would want you to. Somewhere in the guilt of moving forward, of laughing again, of finding joy in ordinary moments, you may have quietly convinced yourself that happiness now would somehow betray their memory. It would not. It would honor it. Archangel Michael says, the person watching over you does not want your life to stop simply because theirs did. They want you to live fully, to love again, to laugh without guilt, to build the life you were always meant to build, carrying their love with you rather than being frozen by its absence. Consider what they would say to you if they were sitting across from you right now, seeing exactly how you have been living since they left. Would they be proud of the way you've carried their memory? Would they gently encourage you to stop holding back joy out of misplaced loyalty to their absence? Sit with that question honestly. You have likely talked to them since they passed, quietly, in moments no one else witnessed. In the car. Before sleep. Standing somewhere that reminds you of them. Those conversations were not one-sided, even though it may have felt that way. Something on the other side was listening, even without words spoken back in return. Archangel Michael says, signs have been sent to you since they left, small ones, easy to dismiss as coincidence if you weren't paying close attention. A song that played at exactly the right moment. A specific number that keeps appearing in ways too frequent to be entirely random. A dream that felt more vivid, more real, than dreams typically feel. Consider those signs again today, with fresh eyes, rather than dismissing them the way you may have before. Think about the last dream you had that felt different from ordinary dreams, more vivid, more emotionally significant, harder to shake off after waking. If someone specific appeared in that dream, someone who has passed, consider that the dream may have carried more meaning than you initially allowed yourself to believe. Archangel Michael says, the connection between this world and the next is thinner than most people assume. Love does not simply stop because a body has stopped. It continues, in a different form, still reaching toward the people it was built around, still watching, still caring, still present in ways that are easy to miss if you are not paying attention. Consider what unfinished business still sits between you and the person you lost. Words never said. Forgiveness never fully given or received. A goodbye that came too suddenly to feel complete. That unfinished business does not have to remain permanently unresolved simply because they are no longer physically present to hear it spoken aloud. Archangel Michael says, speak it anyway. Say the words you never got to say, out loud if you can, quietly if that feels safer. Ask for the forgiveness you never got to ask for, or offer the forgiveness you never got to offer. These words, spoken honestly, reach further than you might expect, even across the distance between this life and whatever comes after it. You have wondered, more than once, whether they know how much you've struggled since they left. Whether they see the nights you couldn't sleep, thinking about everything you wish had gone differently. Whether they understand the specific shape of the hole their absence left in your life. They know. Grief, witnessed from where they now are, is understood more completely than it ever could be understood from here. Archangel Michael says, they do not want you trapped in that grief indefinitely. They want you free, eventually, to remember them with more warmth than pain, to think of them and smile before you cry, rather than the reverse. That shift takes time, and it is not something you can force. But it is possible, and it is coming, even if it doesn't feel close right now. Consider what legacy this person left behind in how you live your life today. A particular value they modeled. A specific piece of advice that still guides your decisions. A way of treating people that you learned from watching them, even if you never consciously realized you were learning it at the time. That legacy is still active, still shaping the world through you, every day you choose to carry it forward. Archangel Michael says, you are their legacy, walking around, still capable of extending the love they gave you outward, toward other people who need it now the way you once needed it from them. Every act of kindness you offer someone else carries a piece of what they taught you, whether you consciously think of them in that moment or not. Think about a specific quality you inherited from this person, something about how you love, how you show up for people, how you handle difficulty. Consider naming that quality clearly, and recognizing it as their continued presence in your life, alive in you even though they are no longer physically here. Archangel Michael says, there is a particular kind of comfort available to you today, if you are willing to receive it. The comfort of knowing that love, real love, does not end. It changes form. It becomes quieter, less immediately present, but it does not disappear. What you shared with this person is not lost. It is simply continuing in a different way than it did before. Consider what it would mean to talk to them today, honestly, about whatever is currently weighing on you. Not because they can respond in words, but because speaking it aloud, directed towards someone who loved you completely, has its own kind of healing power, regardless of whether an audible answer comes back. Archangel Michael says, they want you to know that wherever they are now, they are at peace. Whatever suffering existed at the end of their time here has been fully released. If their passing was difficult, if you witnessed pain you wish you could have prevented, know that none of that pain continues now. They are free of it entirely, completely, in a way that is difficult to fully picture from where you are still standing. Think about the moments of joy you shared together, and consider revisiting those memories deliberately today, rather than letting grief crowd out everything except the pain of the ending. Joy and grief can coexist. Revisiting a happy memory does not betray the sadness of losing them. It honors the fullness of what the relationship actually was. Archangel Michael says, today's warning is this. Do not let fear of forgetting keep you trapped in constant grief. You will not forget them by allowing yourself moments of genuine happiness. Memory does not require suffering to remain intact. You can carry their memory fully, vividly, permanently, while also building a life that includes real joy, real laughter, real forward motion. If this message reached you today, believe that it reached you because someone specific wanted you to receive it. Comment below the name of the person who came to mind while reading this, if you feel comfortable sharing. Send this to someone else who has lost someone and may need this exact reminder today. Thank you for staying until this point, and for letting these words reach the grief you may have been carrying quietly. There is more to say, because love this deep and loss this real rarely fit into a message this short. Archangel Michael says, consider the specific traditions or rituals that have helped you feel connected to them since they passed. Lighting a candle on their birthday. Visiting a place that mattered to both of you. Speaking their name out loud on the anniversary of their passing rather than letting the day pass in silence. These rituals matter more than they might seem to on the surface. They create a structured way to keep the connection alive, rather than leaving it to exist only in unpredictable, unstructured moments of sudden grief. Consider starting a new ritual today, something specifically yours, a way of honoring their memory that fits naturally into your life going forward. It does not need to be elaborate. Simple, repeated gestures often carry more meaning than grand, one-time acts of remembrance. Archangel Michael says, you have likely noticed that certain objects connected to them have taken on outsized significance since they passed. An old sweater. A handwritten note. A piece of jewelry that once belonged to them. These objects carry weight beyond their physical value, becoming vessels for memory and connection. There is nothing wrong with holding on to them, exactly as tightly as feels right to you, for as long as you need to. Think about a specific object connected to this person that you have kept, and what it represents to you beyond its simple physical presence. Consider what it would mean to actually use it sometimes, rather than only keeping it stored away and untouched. Wearing their sweater. Writing in a journal using their old pen. Displaying their photo somewhere you'll see it daily rather than tucked away in a drawer. Active remembrance often feels more alive than passive preservation. Archangel Michael says, Grief has a way of isolating people, convincing them that no one else could possibly understand the specific shape of what they've lost. That isolation, while understandable, often deepens pain rather than easing it. Consider who in your life has also experienced loss, and whether connecting with them, even briefly, might offer a kind of understanding that people who haven't experienced significant loss simply cannot fully provide. Consider joining a grief support group if you have not already, or simply having an honest conversation with someone who has walked a similar loss. There is real comfort in being understood without having to fully explain the details, comfort that comes specifically from shared experience rather than sympathetic imagination alone. Archangel Michael says, "You have likely felt guilty for moments when grief seemed to briefly lift, when you found yourself laughing genuinely, enjoying a moment fully, forgetting for a while that you were supposed to be sad. That guilt is common, and it is misplaced. Moments of genuine joy do not betray your grief. They are simply evidence that you remain fully alive, capable of the same range of human emotion you always had, grief and joy both included." Think about the specific fear underneath that guilt, the fear that moving forward somehow means leaving them behind, forgetting them, loving them less than you did while grief was at its sharpest. That fear does not reflect reality. Moving forward and continuing to love someone who has passed are not mutually exclusive. You can do both simultaneously, fully, without either one diminishing the other. Archangel Michael says, "Consider what this person would actually want for you, if they could speak to you directly right now, without any of the complications death introduces to communication." Most people, when asked to imagine this honestly, recognize that their loved one would want them to live fully, to find happiness again, to build a life worth living rather than a life defined permanently by loss. Consider writing a letter to them today, saying everything you have wanted to say since they passed. Update them on your life. Tell them what you miss most. Ask the questions you never got to ask. This exercise, simple as it sounds, often provides more comfort than people expect before actually trying it. Archangel Michael says, "There is a particular kind of conversation that continues even after someone has passed, happening in the quiet moments when you think of them unprompted, when a memory surfaces unexpectedly, when something reminds you of a specific thing they used to say or do." Consider those moments as a continuing dialogue, rather than simply intrusive reminders of loss. The conversation has not actually ended. It has simply changed form. Think about a specific piece of wisdom or advice this person gave you while they were alive that continues to guide you now. Consider how often you actually apply that wisdom in your daily decisions, whether consciously or not. Their influence continues, active and present, every time you choose based on something they taught you, directly or through the example of how they lived. Archangel Michael says, "Grief often arrives in waves rather than as a single, steadily diminishing feeling. You may feel mostly at peace for weeks, only to be suddenly overwhelmed by a wave of fresh grief triggered by something small and unexpected. This pattern is normal. It does not mean you are grieving incorrectly, or that you have somehow regressed in your healing. Waves are simply how grief moves, unpredictable and nonlinear, for far longer than most people expect. Consider being gentle with yourself during those unexpected waves, rather than frustrated that grief has resurfaced when you believed you had already moved past it. Grief does not disappear on a fixed timeline. It softens gradually, unevenly, in its own time, regardless of how much you might wish it followed a more predictable schedule. Archangel Michael says, the person you lost is not asking you to grieve perfectly, or to heal on a specific schedule, or to feel a particular way at any given moment. They are simply asking you to keep living, keep loving, keep moving forward, carrying their memory with you rather than being permanently anchored by its weight. Think about what forward motion would actually look like for you right now, given everything you have been carrying since their loss. It does not need to be dramatic. It might simply mean re-engaging with a hobby you set aside. Reaching out to a friend you have been avoiding out of exhaustion. Allowing yourself to make a plan for the future again, something you may have stopped doing entirely in the immediate aftermath of losing them. Archangel Michael says, consider what this person taught you about living well, and whether you have been honoring that teaching since they passed, or whether grief has quietly paused your application of it. If they taught you to be generous, consider practicing generosity again. If they taught you to find joy in small things, consider actively looking for those small joys again, deliberately, rather than waiting for joy to simply return on its own. You have likely wondered whether they are disappointed in choices you have made since they left, decisions they might have advised against, paths they might not have chosen for you. Consider that love, real love, does not require agreement on every decision. It simply requires continued care for your well-being, which remains present regardless of whether every choice you make would have been their first choice for you. Archangel Michael says, today's message is not only about comfort. It is also a genuine warning, worth taking seriously. Do not let grief become an identity you build the rest of your life around, indefinitely, at the cost of everything else that could still bring you meaning and connection. Grief deserves its full space and its full time. It does not deserve to become the entire architecture of who you are for the remainder of your own life. Consider what parts of your identity existed before this loss, parts that may have quietly faded as grief took center stage. Interests, friendships, ambitions. Consider reintroducing those parts gradually, not as a betrayal of your grief, but as a return to fuller living, which this person, more than anyone, would likely want for you. Archangel Michael says, you are allowed to build a full life again, one that includes both continued love for the person you lost and genuine engagement with the life still available to you. These two things are not in competition with each other. A full life does not require an empty space where grief used to occupy every corner. It simply requires room for grief to exist alongside everything else, rather than displacing everything else entirely. If this message reached you today, believe it reached you because it was needed, exactly now, exactly in this specific season of your grief or your healing. Comment below if you feel this message speaking directly to your own loss. Share it with someone who has also lost someone and may need this exact reminder today. Thank you for staying with this message until this point. There remains one final layer to this message, and it may be the part most worth carrying forward. Archangel Michael says, the final layer of this message is about what happens after grief has softened enough to allow real reflection, once the sharpest edge of loss has settled into something more manageable. There comes a point, different for everyone, when the person you lost becomes less a source of ongoing pain and more a steady presence woven into the fabric of who you are. Reaching that point is not a betrayal of how much you loved them. It is simply what healing, given enough time and enough gentleness, eventually allows. Consider what it might feel like, someday, to think of them and feel warmth first, before sadness, rather than the reverse order grief often imposes in its earlier stages. That shift is not guaranteed to happen quickly, and it is not something you can force. But it is possible, and for many people who have walked significant loss, it eventually arrives, quietly, without announcement, one ordinary day when they notice a mem. Ori brought a smile before it brought tears. Archangel Michael says, in the meantime, while you are still somewhere in the middle of this process, be patient with yourself. There is no correct timeline for grief, no specific number of months or years after which you should feel entirely healed. Some people carry a version of their grief for the rest of their lives, in a softened, manageable form that coexists peacefully with an otherwise full and happy life. That coexistence is not a failure to heal completely. It is simply what love that ran deep enough to survive death actually looks like, continuing quietly, without demanding to dominate every part of your remaining life. Think about the specific ways you have grown since this loss, painful as the growth may have been. Loss often teaches perspective that is difficult to gain any other way, clarity about what actually matters, patience with other people's struggles, a deeper capacity for empathy born from having walked through something genuinely hard yourself. Consider that growth as part of what this person's life, and their death, ultimately gave you, even though you would have preferred, given the choice, to have them here instead of that particular growth. Archangel Michael says, you are allowed to hold both truths simultaneously. You would trade every bit of growth this loss taught you to have them back, and also, this growth is real and valuable and worth acknowledging. Grief rarely offers simple, single emotions. It offers complicated, layered ones, often contradictory, and all of them are valid to feel at once. Consider what you would want someone you love to know, if you were the one who had passed, watching over them the way this person is now watching over you. You would likely want them to know you were proud of them, that you loved them completely, that you wanted them to live fully rather than being permanently defined by missing you. Extend that same understanding to yourself now, trusting that this is likely close to what your loved one genuinely wants for you as well. Archangel Michael says, there is a specific kind of peace available to people who allow themselves to fully feel their grief, rather than suppressing it or rushing past it toward premature closure. Peace does not arrive by avoiding pain. It arrives, eventually, by moving through it fully, honestly, at whatever pace that process actually requires for you specifically. Consider whether you have been suppressing parts of your grief, perhaps to appear strong for other people, perhaps because expressing it fully felt too overwhelming to allow. If so, consider creating space today, even briefly, to feel whatever you have been holding back. Crying, if it comes. Anger, if that's what surfaces. Whatever the honest emotion is, it deserves room to exist rather than continued suppression. Archangel Michael says, healing is not linear, and it does not mean forgetting. It means integrating the loss into your life in a way that allows you to continue living fully, carrying the person with you rather than being weighed down entirely by their absence. That integration takes time, often more time than grieving people expect or than the people around them have patience for. Think about the people in your life who have expected you to be finished grieving faster than has actually felt possible for you. Consider releasing any pressure you have internalized from their expectations, and trusting your own timeline instead, regardless of how it compares to what others believe should be reasonable. Archangel Michael says, you have permission today to grieve exactly as long as you need to, exactly as intensely as you need to, without apology to anyone who believes you should have moved on by now. Your grief belongs to you, shaped by a relationship that belonged only to the two of you, and no outside timeline gets to dictate how long that grief is allowed to last. Consider what support you actually need right now, honestly assessed, separate from what support you have been pretending you don't need in order to appear strong for the people around you. Whether that support is professional counseling, a trusted friend, a support group, or simply more open conversation with the people already close to you, consider actually reaching for it today, rather than continuing to carry this weight in isolation. Archangel Michael says, reaching for support is not weakness. It is one of the most courageous things a grieving person can do, choosing vulnerability over isolation, connection over silent suffering. Consider what it would mean to take that step today, even in a small way, toward the support you actually need. Think about the specific fear that has kept you from fully opening up about this loss, whether to others or even to yourself. Fear of being seen as too emotional. Fear of burdening people with feelings that have already lasted longer than they expected. Fear that opening up fully will make the pain more real, more overwhelming, harder to contain. Consider that fear honestly, and consider whether it is still serving you, or whether it has simply become another weight added to grief that is already heavy enough on its own. Archangel Michael says, this message will end soon, but the connection it points toward does not end with it. The person you lost remains present in ways both subtle and profound, in your habits, your values, your capacity to love, your memory of what they taught you about living well. That presence is not diminished by time. If anything, it deepens, becoming a steadier, quieter part of who you are rather than the sharp, overwhelming presence grief made it feel like at first. Consider, one final time, what you would want to say to them if you had one more conversation available to you right now. Say it, quietly, wherever you are. Trust that it reaches further than you might expect, across whatever distance exists between this life and whatever comes after it. Archangel Michael says, they are watching, and they are proud of you, exactly as you are, exactly where you currently stand in your grief and in your healing. That has not changed since they left, and it will not change no matter how long healing takes for you. If this message reached you today, believe it reached you because it was needed, precisely now, precisely for this specific loss you have been carrying. Comment below if this message spoke to a loss you have experienced. Share it with someone who has also lost someone they love, someone who may need exactly this reminder today. Thank you for staying with this message until its very last word. Carry them with you, gently, as you continue living the life they would want for you. That is enough. That has always been enough. One more thing before this message truly ends. Consider the specific season you are in right now, and whether it might be time for a small act of forward motion, something you have been postponing until you felt ready enough, healed enough, strong enough. Readiness rarely announces itself clearly in advance. It often arrives quietly, in the middle of taking the step, rather than fully before it. Archangel Michael says, you do not need to feel completely ready to take that next step. You only need to be willing, imperfectly, uncertainly, to take it anyway. Whatever that step looks like for you specifically, whether it's re-engaging with work you set aside, opening yourself to a new relationship, or simply allowing yourself a full, uncomplicated day of joy without guilt, consider taking it soon, not because grief has fully ended, but because life continues to ask something of you even in the middle of loss. Think about what this person contributed to your understanding of courage, of resilience, of what it means to keep going even when things are difficult. Consider drawing on that understanding now, applying it to your own healing the way you once, perhaps, watched them apply it to their own difficulties while they were still here. Archangel Michael says, their courage did not end when their life did. It continues, transmitted through you, through the ways you learn to face difficulty by watching how they faced it themselves. Draw on that inheritance now, in this specific difficulty of grieving them, the way you might draw on any other lesson they taught you throughout your life together. Consider, finally, what gratitude you can genuinely hold for having known this person at all, even though the cost of that connection was eventually losing them. Some people go through life without ever experiencing a love as significant as the one you shared. That is worth acknowledging, even while grieving its ending, because both truths, the gratitude and the grief, belong together, inseparable, each one giving the other its full weight and meaning. Archangel Michael says, love this real does not disappear. It simply changes shape, continuing to influence your life long after its original form has ended. That continuation is not a consolation prize for losing them. It is the actual, ongoing presence of a love that was real enough to survive even death itself. If this message reached you today, trust it reached you when you needed it most. Comment below the name of the person you are thinking of right now, if you feel ready to share it. Send this to someone else who is grieving and may need exactly this reminder today. Thank you, sincerely, for staying with this message until its final line, and for allowing grief and love, both, the space they deserve. They are watching. They are proud. And they want you to keep living, fully, carrying them with you every step of the way. Before you close this, take one more moment. Sit quietly for a few seconds, wherever you are right now. Think of their face, clearly, the way you remember it best. Let yourself smile if a smile comes, and let yourself cry if that comes instead. Both are welcome. Both are honest. Both are honoring the love that made this loss so significant in the first place. Archangel Michael says, this quiet moment matters more than any single sentence written in this entire message. Words can point toward comfort, but the actual comfort arrives in moments like this one, when you allow yourself to simply be present with your memory of them, without rushing past it toward the next distraction. Consider what you might do differently tomorrow, having sat with this message today. Perhaps a small ritual of remembrance. Perhaps a conversation with someone you have been avoiding about this loss. Perhaps simply permission to feel whatever tomorrow brings without judging yourself for however grief decides to show up that day. Archangel Michael says, tomorrow is not guaranteed to feel easier than today, and that is all right. Healing does not move in a straight line toward ease. It moves in its own unpredictable pattern, and your only job is to keep showing up for it, gently, one day at a time, exactly as you have been doing since this loss first arrived in your life. You have already survived every difficult day since they left. That is not nothing. That is evidence of a strength you may not fully credit yourself with, built specifically through the hardest thing you have likely ever had to walk through. Archangel Michael says, they know that strength. They see it in you, clearly, and they are proud of every difficult day you have survived, every quiet moment of grief you have moved through, every small step forward you have taken since losing them. If this message reached you today, believe it arrived at the exact right moment, carrying exactly what you needed to hear. Thank you, one final time, for staying until this very last word, and for letting both the grief and the comfort in this message find their way to you today. Rest now, knowing you are watched over, loved, and never truly walking this alone. Archangel Michael says, one final reflection before this truly ends. Grief and gratitude, held together, are what make a life fully lived rather than one lived only on the surface. You have loved deeply enough to grieve deeply, and that is not a burden to resent. It is proof of a connection most people go their whole lives hoping to experience even once. Consider the specific way you want to carry their memory forward, not as a weight, but as a quiet source of strength available to you whenever you need it. A phrase they used to say, spoken in your own voice now, passed forward to someone younger who never got to meet them. A value they held, lived out through your own daily choices, long after their voice has gone quiet. This is how people continue, not through permanence of the body, but through permanence of influence, carried by everyone who loved them enough to keep it alive. Archangel Michael says, you are that person. You are the one keeping their influence alive, whether you realize it in any given moment or not. Every time you choose kindness because you learned it from them, every time you face difficulty with courage because you watched them do the same, they continue, through you, in the world they can no longer physically walk through themselves. That is the final truth of this message. They are not entirely gone. They live on, quietly, steadily, through you, and through everyone else who carries a piece of what they gave while they were here. Carry it well. Carry it forward. And know, without doubt, that they are watching, proud, and grateful for exactly who you have become. Archangel Michael says, that is everything for today. Walk gently, remember fully, and live the life they would be proud to see you living. Consider one last time everything you have read here, and let it settle in you slowly over the coming days, rather than all at once. Some truths take time to fully land, and that is all right. You do not need to have everything resolved immediately. You only need to keep walking forward, gently, carrying their love with you as you go. God says, this message is complete. Carry what you needed from it, and let the rest go gently. They are watching, they are proud, and they will always, in some form, be with you. Consider, before you go, saying their name out loud one more time, quietly, wherever you are. Let it be spoken with love rather than only sorrow. Names carry weight, and speaking theirs today, deliberately, is its own small act of honoring everything they meant, and continue to mean, to you. Archangel Michael says, that is the whole of today's message. Rest in it, carry it forward, and trust that the love you shared with them was never something death could fully take away. Consider what peace might feel like, fully, someday, once this grief has softened into something gentler than it feels right now. That peace is not a betrayal of your love. It is simply what healing looks like when it is finally allowed to complete its slow, patient work in you, in its own time, at its own pace, exactly as it should. Archangel Michael says, walk forward now, gently, knowing you carry more love than loss, even on the days it feels like the reverse. That love was real. It still is. And it will remain part of you for as long as you live. God says, that is all for today. Go gently, live fully, and know you are loved, both by those still here with you and by the one now watching from beyond. Archangel Michael says, thank you for opening this today. It was meant for you, and it reached you exactly when it needed to.